Work. Work. Let's work. Work.
We're in the trenches, breaking down the defensive line from technique and fundamentals to NFL and college football analysis. You're listening to Big Dawg Trench Talk.
Work. 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 Let's work.
What's up, Big Dawg? This is Coach Roll at 5-Star Linemen Academy, and welcome to another episode of Big Dawg Trench Talk. Big Dawg Trench Talk is an extension of BigDawgFootball.com. Big Dawg, if you have not had the chance to go visit my website, I suggest you take a look. We're getting subscribers every day to BigDawgFootball.com. That's BIGDAWG football.com. Big Dawg, we have tons of tutorials. We just added some of the stunts out of different fronts, talking about the text, talking about the X. We're going to add the 10, the not, things like that. But we're always adding to BigDawgFootball.com. Coaches and athletes have been very appreciative with our new optimal defensive line training system. We added that this year, and it's a system in which I take my defensive line through the guys that I work with and that I train in the offseason. Because as I mentioned before, there is an order to training your big dogs up front. We recently had a coach reach out to us and say thank you because he used the videos for his defensive line in this past season. And because of the videos and the tutorials that we talked about, especially for the run game, he said that they were ranked number 1 in the county, especially for few yards allowed on run plays. And that's the number one goal. The number one goal with BigDawgFootball.com is that coaches and athletes are the best that they could be. That's our number one priority, is that through this system, through the website, that we give access to drills and pass rush tutorials and D-line talks that will help that athlete be the best that they can be. So Big Dawg, take a look. Visit www.BigDawgFootball.com and take a look. Tell me what you think. All right, Big Dawg, let's talk trenches. Before I say anything else, I want to make this statement loud and clear. Big Dawg, there is power in your hands. There is power in your hands. We're still talking about training our defensive linemen in the offseason. In the previous episode on Big Dawg Trench Talk, we were talking about the importance of the feet mechanics in your stance. We talked about how the feet lead to a lot of very important things when it comes to playing in optimal power out of your stance. It always, and it will always, start in your stance. And as we continue to talk about the stance, we have to include the hand placement. The feet placement was very important. And I mentioned to you that for me, when I wake up in the morning, I put my feet down first. But that's the first thing I do. That's not why I stop. That's why I start. But now in your stance, your hand placement is essential. You can have your feet placement in the right place. Your feet can be exactly where they need to be. But if your hands are not placed in the right place, then you just lost the power you just established with your feet. There is power in your hands. And so you have to talk about your hand placement in your stance. Where you place your hands in your stance determines the weight distribution of the man. Let me say that one more time, Big Dawg. A little slower. Where you place your hands in your stance determines the weight distribution of the man. Where you place your hands in your stance determines the weight distribution of the man. That is so important. Let me give you an example. So one day, Big Dawg, I'm driving down the street and I'm driving in my car. And as I'm driving in my car, I accelerate. I speed up my car, I'm on the expressway, and I hit a certain speed. And as I hit this particular speed, my car starts shaking. And I realized that I could not hit that speed because obviously something was off. There was something that was off with my car. True story. And so I had to slow down. And the reason why I slowed down is because when I got to that particular speed, my car started shaking. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? Why is my car shaking when I get to a particular speed? So when I slowed down and I got my vehicle to travel at a certain speed, I didn't have that problem anymore when I went a certain speed. But I didn't like the speed I was going. I wasn't going fast. Now, I'm not saying I was speeding. I'm just saying I didn't like going 40 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour on the expressway. You can at least go 75. So here I am hitting 70 miles per hour, 65, and my car starts rattling and shaking. And again, I'm like, what's going on? So, long story short, I took my car to a mechanic. And I said, hey, listen, I'm driving my car, and when I hit a certain speed, my car starts shaking. So he said it could be a number of different problems, right? I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, so I trust the diagnosis of my vehicle. And he says, let me take a couple different tests. So after taking the test and after going through a couple different analysis with my vehicle, what he told me was that my tires needed to be balanced. My tires were not balanced. And because my tires were not balanced, they were not set for me to go that particular speed. Somehow, some way, my tires had lost their balance. And those of you who know what I'm talking about, your tires have to be balanced, or the rim, right, don't need to be balanced in order for that vehicle to be able to go a certain speed without the car shaking like that. And so I realized something about my car. I realized something about power. I realized something about performing at an optimal level when I thought about the biomechanics of an athlete. If that athlete is not balanced, if that athlete is not balanced, it means they are not stable. And how can an athlete perform optimally if they don't have stability? How can an athlete perform optimally if they don't have stability? Big Dog, what you talking about? Big Dog, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. There is power in your hands. Where you place your hands in your stance will determine the weight distribution of the man. In other words, if you have your hands placed in the wrong place, then you are not stable in your stance. And if you are not stable in your stance, you will not have power out of your stance. You will not have a powerful start out of your stance because you was never stable in your stance. How can our defensive linemen play with power and have great explosion out of their stance? Because we're talking about an athlete closing that window. The moment that ball passes 3 blades of turf, right away, that athlete is moving with the ball. They're going from 0 to 60. They are accelerating and closing that space, breaking the plane, bursting the bubble of that offensive lineman quickly, optimally, powerfully, speed, quickness, and they're attacking that offensive lineman in front of them. But how can that athlete, that defensive lineman do that if they are not stable in their stance? What allows stability in stance? Your hands provide stability in your stance. Your hands provide stabilization in your stance. And when you are stable in your stance, it means you're balanced. And when you are balanced, it means you have the potential to have a great start, a great powerful start out of your stance. Now, what am I speaking specifically to? For example, if you go back and watch, again, some of your athletes, you go back and watch their game film from last year. Now, you have to really slow this thing down and really see what's going on. But if you look at your athletes in a 3-point stance or even a 4-point stance, look at where their hands are at the point of contact. Look at if their hands are present at the point of contact. Do their hat hit first? Are they hat hands? I know that some D-line coaches teach that. I do not. I do not, because we need to use our hands. Our hands is where our power is. You got so much going on with concussions now, and you got so many things going on with hitting, with your head. And that's how I was taught, back in the day. Hat hands. That is not the case. Your neck, right? Your spine was not designed for you to hit people 60 reps, 60 times a game. That's not what it's for, right? That's what we have hands for. Our hands is what's going to bring power to the point of contact. It's our hands. It's not our head. It's our hands. Now, there's some times where you place your head so that you know that you have leverage on the man. But we're not hitting people with our head off the ball every time. We don't do that. At least that's not what we should train our defensive linemen to do. That is not right. We play with our hands. Our helmets are there to protect our head. And we must learn how to play with our hands. That's where power is anyway. Your power is in your hands, right? So, point is, you go back and look at the film and pay attention to how often your defensive linemen are making contact with the offensive lineman with their hands first. Now, right before that defensive lineman makes contact with the offensive lineman with their hands head first, sometimes, rewind it. Look at where their hands are before contact. You're probably going to see their hands down towards the ground. You might see that. You might see their hands wide, very wide, as if they're grabbing at the offensive lineman. You're going to see a lot of different things. But I'll tell you this, the reason why there's the inefficiency in hand play is because of the hand positioning in the stance. The reason why the hands are absent is because they're too heavy. It's because they are not placed in the right position in the stance. Here we go. Weight distribution. The one thing that we must have in a defensive lineman stance, 3-point or 4-point, is what I'm talking about, is that they have to learn to play in their power box. I did a tutorial or a discussion, a breakdown on BigDawgFootball.com that talks about playing in your box, but outside of the offensive lineman's box. The discussion was about, what does it mean to be blocked? What does it mean to be blocked? And if a defensive lineman is being blocked, most of the time, you'll find that defensive lineman in the offensive lineman's box, because to be blocked means to be in his box. Great discussion. I would definitely check it out. But power happens in the frame of a lineman's box. Because when a defensive lineman plays in his power box, then he is stable and he's balanced and he's going to demonstrate power. What am I talking about? Okay. Take, for instance, if you take that defensive lineman's hand and use his down hand. So let's say he's in a man hand stance. Again, I like to use the 3 technique as an example. And he's the defensive left. And he's in a man hand stance, which means he has his right hand down. Now you take his hand and you stretch that hand as far as that hand can go. Now, we could be talking about 2 yards, right? Let's just say it's way in front of the shoulder. Question, how much of that defensive lineman's weight is on his hands? Answer is too much weight. How can we expect a defensive lineman to play with quick hands and he has too much weight on his hands? How can we expect a defensive lineman to attack with his hands, but he has so much weight on his hands that he has to push off his hands just to move forward? That defensive lineman's hands are too heavy. His weight distribution is too far forward. What if we move that down hand, that right hand in this case, close, very close to the power foot? In this case, the power foot is the front foot, which is the left foot, being on the defensive left and being in a man-hand stance. So imagine with me, again, the right hand is down, the left foot is up, the left foot is the power foot, the back foot is the progressor. And his down hand is almost on the same line as his front foot. Again, weight distribution is off. There's no balance there. He can't come out of that stance. He's in a bunched stance. Hand is way too close to the foot. And again, the foot is probably completely on the ground and it's probably too light. There's no weight on his hands. He needs weight on his hands, the right amount of weight, but now there's barely any weight because his hands are too close to his foot. There is a such thing as having your hands too far from your power foot, and there is a such thing as having your hands too close to your power foot. Now, what if that down hand is outside of the back foot? I talk a lot about vertical alignment, where the down hand needs to be in line with the back foot, the progressor. That down hand, you need to be able to draw a line from your back foot to your down hand. What if you take that down hand and you move that down hand way outside of the back foot? And when I say outside, again, I'm referring to moving that hand to the right. That if you draw a line from your hand backwards, there is no foot there because you have that down hand really far outside of it. What's going to happen? Well, the result is going to be that his weight distribution is going to be too far to the right. Why? Because the hand is pulling him to the right. Why? Because he's outside of his power box. He's outside of his frame. The hand is not in his power box. The hand is not in his frame. So now his weight distribution is inside, too far inside. And so therefore there is no stability, there is no balance, which ultimately leads to no power or not much power coming out of your stance. Now, let's take that down hand and move it too far inside of his stance. Again, the right hand is now all the way to the left foot in this case because the left foot on the defensive left, right? He's in a man hand stance. So he has his right hand down, but now his right hand is inside of his back foot and right next to his power foot. I know that may sound silly, but think about it. Where is his weight distribution now? His weight distribution is too far to the left. Why? Because his hand is too far to the left. Big Dog, what is my point? You put that down hand too far out, the weight distribution is too far forward. You put that down hand too far back, close to the power foot, the weight distribution is too far back. You put that down hand too far inside, weight distribution is too much to the left because it's too far inside of the back foot. You put that down hand too far outside, and your weight distribution is too far outside of your frame. What's my point? Where you put your hands in your stance determines the weight distribution of the man. Your hand placement for your stance is very important. It is essential where you put your hand, because if you don't put your hand in the right place, what's going to happen is you're going to cause instability. Your weight distribution has to be as close to being centered as possible. Now, some coaches say 60-40. Nothing wrong with 60-40, right? 60 on the back leg, 40 on the front. But there is an issue, again, given the scenario, where your hands have 60% and your legs have 40%. Why? Does the athlete have strong enough arms to hold up 60% of his weight? That's a great question. Can he be functional in a 60-40 situation, in a 60-40 stance ratio? Can he actually handle that? Oh, coach, my hands hurt. Why? I have too much weight on my hands. Yes, you have to get your hands stronger to be able to hold that percentage, but until then, you got to shift your weight distribution. How do you shift your weight distribution? You have to move your hands. Can an athlete handle a 60-40, 60 hands, 40 legs? Do we even want that? Some coaches say, 70-30, 70 on the hands, 30 on the back legs. Ooh, that's a lot. Again, goal line, you want your guy to just shoot guys at the ankles, shoot at their knees, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, you're going to be in a 4-point stance. You're going to be heavy-handed because you're not trying to use your hands. You're just trying to dive to create a power. If that's the kind of, defense that you teach, right? So be it. Obviously, yeah, you have to be heavy-handed on that if you're just talking about shooting the gap. But I'm talking about guys that have power in their hands. I'm talking about defensive linemen that are punching those guys in front of them. Well, in order for you to have quick hands at the line of scrimmage, then you have to make sure that your hands are properly placed. Now, that is a big problem with defensive linemen. When I watch defensive linemen play and they say, Coach, how can I get my defensive linemen to play with better hands? Should I get their hands quicker? Is it a weight room issue? Coach, what is it? Well, sometimes it is a weight room issue. That's a whole nother episode. But most of the time, in my observation and my analysis, it's in the stance. One, the hands are way too far out front, too heavy-handed, especially my big dogs that get into the 4-point stance. When they get into the 4-point stance, that almost gives them an excuse to lean even more so on the hands. And the first thing they do is push off the hands. If I'm pushing off my hands, it means I'm going up. Not many dogs know how to shoot their hands straight out of their stance. And maybe I shouldn't say that. It's not that they don't know how. It's just that they cannot because they have way too much weight on their hands. Now, when I've worked with some of my big dogs and I've adjusted the hand placement of their hands in their stance, big difference. Because my hands are light enough, I still have weight on my hands, and I have all my fingers down. Okay, not knuckles, not my whole palm. Because now I'm in the ground, and we're not punching nobody, hopefully, at the line of scrimmage. Our hands are open and ready to strike at the palm. That's where the hard part of the hand is, at the palm. And I teach pinky side palm. Again, that's a whole nother discussion. But even my big dogs in my 4-point stance, where we adjust their hands in their 4-point stance and just move them closer toward the foot a little bit more, and we even out that weight distribution, man, there's a big difference of guys having enough power on their legs to explode, but having just enough weight on their hands to punch. And they don't have to push off their hands. Quick little check. You have your dogs get in their stance, 3 or 4-point. And you say, get in your stance. And you say, pick up your hands. Now, I used to always do this, and I still do. If I have a new athlete, a new defensive lineman that I start working with, I say, get in your stance. Perfect. Now pick up your hands. If they can't pick up their hands in their stance, that is a problem. If you can't pick up your hands in your stance, if you can't pick them up without falling, that is a problem. Now, do we want our defensive linemen to be able to pick up their hands in their stance and not have to push off their hands a little bit? No, we don't want that. We don't want them to be so light in their stance. Again, depending on the technique we're playing at the line of scrimmage, read and react or strike and attack, But yet we don't want them to be so light in their stance that when they pick up their hands, they don't have to push off them a little bit. But neither do we want our dogs to have to walk their hands back close to the foot to get off of it. If you ask your defensive lineman to pick up their hands, I don't mean take a step. Without taking a step, get in your stance, put your hands down, now pick up your hands. If they have to walk their hands back to pick their hands up, then their hands are too far forward. Wherever they probably walk their hands back to is where their hands probably should be. You understand what I'm saying, big dog? Because if you can't pick up your hands out of your stance, then I can't expect you to punch the man in front of you if you can't even pick your hands up. Think about it. You can't even pick your hands up out of your stance. How do I expect you to control the man in front of you? There is power in your hands. But right now, you can't use your hands if your weight distribution is off, if your hands are not properly positioned for you to function optimally at the line of scrimmage. You're totally thrown off. You're trying to perform at the highest level and at the highest speed that your body can function, but you're not stable, you're not balanced like my car. Something is off with your stance. And it's causing issues at the point of attack. Your hands are absent. Okay, that's a big problem. We need stabilization. We need balance. The more balanced that athlete is in his stance, the more under control he's going to be at the point of attack. If there's no stability in the stance, don't ask him to control the man in front of him. If he has no control of his body in his stance, how do we expect that athlete to have control of the man in front of him? If he does not have control of himself in his stance, that's an issue. We have to draw a power box, and that athlete's stance needs to be within that box. Because the moment your hand begins to leave that power box is the moment you begin to lose power. Every athlete has a power box they must operate in. And in your stance, again, if your hand is not properly placed, you are losing power. And if you're losing power in your stance, you're not going to have power at the point of attack. Some defensive linemen win or lose in their stance. Now, I don't care how good they are, they're good after the first two steps. After the first two steps, then they're a great defensive lineman, then they're a great rusher. But they have to fall out of their stance, and then you start to see them play. Well, we know that that's a luxury that a lot of defensive linemen don't have. You can't take two steps and then start playing at the line of scrimmage. There are a lot of great offensive linemen that's not going to allow you to take those two steps. They're going to jump on you right away because they see how heavy your hands are. And if they can cover you up knowing that you're going to fall out of your stance instead of explode out, you're going to fall out, then they got you covered. All of a sudden, you're playing straight up and down because your hands aren't there. And if your hands aren't there, you don't have leverage. If your hands are absent, so is your leverage. If your hands are absent, so is your leverage. You cannot play with power. You cannot play with leverage without your hands. And if you don't have hands in your stance, then you don't have hands at all. You're not going to have hands at the point of attack. And that way, which means to me, you're not attacking. You're not attacking with your hands. So where should that hand go? Well, I talk about this again in my stance portion of the optimal defensive line training system, where we talk about the stance, where it starts. Most people, I tell them, this is what you should do. Once you get in your heel-toe ratio, if that's the kind of stance you're getting in, again, we have that neutral stance where those feet are neutral, depending on what the defense calls for you to do. Right now, I'm talking about, well, whether it be neutral or staggered, doesn't matter. But what I tell most people, and it's a great starting point, it is a great starting point, is that you need to place your power foot down. So whichever the front foot is your power foot. That's my definition. Front foot's the power foot, because power means I'm moving myself. Okay. So that power foot is that front foot, which helps me move forward. So what I want to do is I place my power foot down, and I want to take my back foot and I want to walk out about a shoe and a half. Now, as I walk my back foot, again, left foot's down, I take my right foot and I put it in front of my left foot. That's a shoe. Now, walk the back foot about another half of a shoe. And then I have a video that's visually showing what I'm talking about. Normally, that is the plane your hand should be on. Your hand should be a shoe and a half, or around a shoe and a half, away from your power foot. It should be a shoe and a half away, at least for starters. Start there. A shoe and a half away from your power foot, but it should be on the same vertical line as the back foot. That's important. Away from the front foot by the shoe and a half, but on the same line as the back foot. Most of the time, that's where that hand should be. Now, whether you move that hand forward a little bit, whether you move that hand back a little bit, from there, that's where you find where your power position really is. But start there. 2 shoes or 2.5 shoes away, probably too far. Half a shoe away, depending on the defense and what it's calling for you to do, may be too close. Most of the time, about a shoe and a half away from the front foot, the power foot, but on the same vertical line as that back foot, most of the time that's a sweet spot, and you can adjust from there if you need to. Now you know you're in your power box. Now you know you are stable and balanced. You're not too far inside. Your weight's not too far outside. Your weight's not too far forward. Your weight is not too far back. But you found your stability in your stance. You are stable, and you can explode out of your stance, driving off your feet and letting your hands go. Because when you let your hands go, your hips and feet follow. But it's hard to let your hands go when they're held captive in your stance, when you have them buried in the ground because they're too heavy. When they're too heavy, they're buried. And when they're buried, you can't let them go. And that's the issue. Big problem. Huge problem with defensive linemen at the point of attack. Their hands are absent. Big Dog, check for that. That's a big one. So, summarizing this piece here, I'm talking about the hand placement in the stance. Where should the hands be placed in the stance? Where should the hands be placed in the stance? Where the man places his hands determines the weight distribution of the man. Huge deal. That big dog up front has to be balanced. We don't want him trying to operate at the highest level, at his maximum speed and quickness, and stuff starts breaking down, like my car. He's got to be balanced. He has to be stable. And that's truly the key to being powerful at the point of attack. Now that we have an idea, right, of where that hand needs to be in your stance, here's another very important piece of information. What is the positioning of your hands in your stance? Okay. I want to go back to the example of that sprinter, that track athlete in the blocks. Okay. And again, if you haven't seen this before, go to YouTube. Just type in, the Olympics. And they always have that camera that zooms in really close to those sprinters in their stance, in the blocks. Okay. And there's a white line there. That white line tells them where they need to start. You can't go past the white line. Your hands can't go past that white line, because if so, you're not running 100 meters. So from that white line to the finish line is 100 meters, right? And so you have that white line there. And so what you will see is, watch this, you'll see the sprinter and look at his index or her index and thumb. Look at the index and the thumb. Is the index and the thumb vertically placed or horizontally placed? Is it vertically placed or horizontally placed? Come on, coach. Does that even matter? Is that a big of a deal where their index and thumb is? I've had coach ask me that. Coach, come on now. That's not a big deal, is it? We just tell our big dogs to put their hand down. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's huge. It's very important. Okay, I'm going to explain why in a second. Look at that sprinter. Their index and thumb does not cross that line. The index and thumb is horizontally positioned, not vertically positioned. If the index and thumb was vertically positioned, then their index would pass the line, right? So if the thumb was on the line and their index was closer to the finish line, just do you see it that way? Then they would be passing that line. I know you're saying this is not track, this is football. Hear what I'm saying? There's a reason why their index and thumb are horizontally aligned. Yes, one reason is so that they can really get on that white line as much as they can without crossing it. That's important. That's a big deal. But the main reason why that sprinter has their index and thumb horizontally aligned is because it causes the elbows to be drawn in. It causes the elbows to be tucked to their side. How important is our elbows being inside at the point of attack? Power, right? Power in a punch comes from inside. It's an inside punch. It is thumbs up. It is elbows in. Hands are aligned with the shoulder, right? Hands are open, elbows are in, hands are at the height of the shoulder, playing with great leverage and punching that guy in front of you. But the key is that you must punch with your elbows before you punch with your hand. Okay? What I mean by that is that my elbows are aiming where my hands are going to punch. If I want to punch that guy in his chest plate, which is where we should be punching because we punch plates, then my elbow should be pointing to the plate so that my hands can strike it. Imagine the elbow being like a laser beam. And when my elbow, the laser of my elbow shoots its laser, is shooting at the chest plate, and that is exactly where my hands actually land. You have to punch with the elbow before you punch with the hand. When you have horizontal index and thumb, you are forcing your elbows inside. Look at that sprinter. Look where his index and thumb is. Look where the elbows are. Why do they want their elbows in? Because they want everything about their mechanics to go straight. Straight. The quickest distance between 2 points, what Dad always taught me, is a straight line. The quickest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Everything about you in your stance must say straight. Pow, straight. If I want to hit that near number, I need to go straight. Now, I'm not talking about stunts. I'm not talking about anything we have to cross face or slant. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying if you know you got to punch that guy in front of you, if you know you got a double team coming and you trying to attack one of those guys to put them on a different level and you got to explode into that near number as quickly as you can, the quickest distance between 2 points is straight. But in order for me to go straight, I must be aligned straight. That index and thumb being horizontally aligned allows the elbow to work inside. And when you have your elbow inside, because your thumb is aligned, index and thumb is horizontally aligned, you're planning your power box. Now, what am I talking about? I see a lot of D linemen And again, if this works for you, you keep it. But you're going to have some issues. You take that index and thumb and align it vertically. And look at most of your D linemen and look at where the elbow is. Is the elbow outside of the frame or in the frame? Is the elbow flared and away from the side, or is it inside? Is it to the side? Think about it. Watch them. Look at it. We don't want the elbow to bow. We don't want a bowed elbow. We don't want a bowed elbow because look where the elbow is. Remember, if the elbow is a laser and the elbow is wide and out and flared, where's that laser pointing? Is it pointing to the chest plate? No, the elbow is pointing to the shoulder pad. Well, no wonder your dog is punching the shoulder pad of the offensive lineman in front of him. Why? Because his elbows keep swinging out. They're bowing, they're flaring, they're going out. Why is that happening to my defensive lineman up front? Well, I'll tell you one place you can check. Look at the hand placement in the stance. Look at the index and thumb. More specifically, look at the index and thumb. Now, some guys know how to have the index and thumb vertically with the elbows tucked inside. If that works for you, that's totally fine. But think about it. When you have your index and thumb vertical and your elbows tucked in, a little uncomfortable. But for some guys, it works. But you've got to turn your hand to punch your palm, big dog. You've got to punch and turn or twist your thumb up to actually be able to grab cloth and work off. That's a lot of movement going on. For me, I want to take as much negative movement out as I can, as much as possible. Well, coach, that's not how you bench press. I've heard that too. You don't grab the bar like that. I've heard a lot of that. And you're right. That is part of the problem. Now you got to bench press. You have to bench press to really work on the actual chest cavity to build that pectoral up. All of the pectoral up. But even so, your elbow's not supposed to be all the way out on the bench press. They should be at least at 45 drive, right? Not all the way out. But that's the thing. When I work my big dogs in the weight room, we have to do a lot of correcting exercises because guys do so much bench press that their muscle memory is trained that they're strong when their elbows are wide. Man, do I not see a lot of that. I see a lot of guys at the point of contact that their body is used to the wide elbow chest press on the bench, that when it's time for them to punch something really hard, the elbows flare. Why? Because that's what they've been trained to do, to flare, to open up, get away from the side and punch. Problem is that your hands are not going to land. Your hands are not going to land where they're supposed to land because your elbows keep getting away from you. Now, I don't care how much you bench press with wide elbows. It's very difficult to move an offensive lineman if your hands are not punching his plate. The plate is the center, is the solid surfaced center of the offensive lineman. And when you move that plate, it's sturdy enough that when you punch that plate, that you'll move the person. You punch the plate, you move the player. You punch the plate, you move the player. You punch anything else besides that plate, you ain't moving that player really. Not on run. If you want to punch that guy and your hands have to land in a solid place, the plate is where it is. But that plate, big dog's not that big. If you open up your elbows wide, you're probably going to miss the plate. Why is that happening? Well, it's happening, other than the weight room. Sometimes that's a huge reason why, but also it's happening because of the positioning of the hands in the stance. Now, I'm going to say this. Wherever your hands are on the land is how your hands will land. Wherever your hands are on the land is how your hands will land. Think about it. Why is it that my defensive linemen are hitting the shoulder pad of the offensive lineman? Well, the index and thumb, right, being vertically aligned in the stance is telling him to hit the offensive lineman with fingers up. not thumb up, but with fingers up. Almost like you're catching a football. You know what I'm saying? If you're catching a football and it's coming at you, right? You make that diamond shape. That's how I was taught growing up. Your four fingers are up towards the sky and your thumb is down. Well, if you do that, making that diamond shape, right? If you take that diamond shape and you put your hands exactly how you have them in that diamond shape and you put that hand on the ground, that's vertical alignment. Elbows are out. Think about it. You look at a receiver who's catching the ball like that, where's his elbows? They're out, right? Why is that? Because of the positioning of the index and thumb. Wherever the thumb is, the elbow is. If the elbow is if the thumbs are in, the elbows are out. If the thumb is up, the elbows are in. Thumb in, elbows out. Thumb up, elbows in, or the elbows down. Why? Because the elbow and thumb work together. The elbow and thumb work together. How can we fix that? We have to position our thumb properly in the stance. We're already prepped to punch in our stance if we can work on the horizontal index and thumb positioning. Why? Because wherever your hands are on the land is how your hands will land. Man, that's huge. I wish somebody had told me that in high school and college. That your positioning in your stance, the hand positioning, the hand placement in the stance, before you even punch your hands, before you even let your hands go, plays a huge role at the point of attack. Like that sprinter. The moment the gun fires, bah, his elbows are in. He's splitting, coming out of his stance, exploding out of those blocks. But you'll see everything inside. You will see his side scrub. He'll feel his inside scrub the inside of his arm. That's a big one for me. And I tell my guys, big dog, if you don't feel any friction on the inside of your arm, the elbows are too wide. If you feel a lot of wind come in between your armpit, the elbows are too wide. If I can see any daylight inside your arms, they're too wide. The more sunlight I can see, the more daylight I can see, the more he can get in. I want him in tight, no sunlight. In tight, no sunlight. Play in your power box, but outside of his. Play in your box, but outside of his. Why play in your box? Because that's where your power is. You are stable there. You are powerful there. The more things about you that are outside of your frame, your power frame, the weaker you are. Why? Because it means you're out of position. You're not stable. You're not balanced. You're not in position to perform optimally because you're not within your power box. Learn to play in your box, but outside of his. And sometimes playing in your box means that you're already in your box in your stance. Where are your hands in your stance? That is a big question. We talked about the feet. We talked about the positioning of the feet, the heel and the shin angle and all that stuff. The next thing, look at the hands. Where are those hands, big dog? I'm telling you, that matters. It's January, coming up on February, and these are the important things we should be working on. Yes, it is important to work on hand mechanics, to work on having quick hands and doing all these awesome and fancy hand drills to get my guys' hands quicker. I love watching those drills. They're really cool to watch, and I do them a lot too. But at the right time, we have to train our guys to even get in a position to even do that. When you're doing those hand drills, you have your hands in front of you, right? But if our hands are not positioned in our stance the right way, we won't have our hands in front of us to even do those moves. It's almost a waste of time, big dog. It's almost a waste of time to work on those hand mechanic moves if they're not getting to that position with their hands in front of them to do them. Why is that not happening? Because of the positioning of the hands in the stance. For some reason, I can't get my hands in front of me to play ball. So why work on the hand mechanic drills, all the 3 beats and 4 beats, and all those fancy hand drills that I see, which are good, right? They're not bad. They're good. They're awesome. They're great. You got to do those. But if your defensive lineman is having an issue to even have his hands present because they're absent, then I will work on that first. Why is it that when it's time for one-on-ones or when it's time for the game, hands aren't there? They're too wide. They're down to the ground. I'm headbutting the guy in front of me. Check the stance. Check the hand placement in the stance. And that's going to tell you a lot about how he or she's going to perform or why he or she's not performing. Big Dog, these are very important things that mean a lot. I'm telling you. I have seen athletes' game completely change because of something as small as hand placement and hand positioning. I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've seen it happen. 1 minute, they're having a hard time using their hands and they keep getting blocked and they don't know why. And the next minute, they're playing with excellent hands, quick hands, in control. They're getting their hands on first. They punching plates. They grabbing cloth and working off. Why? Because we had to adjust the hand placement in the stance. Man, that made a big difference in their game. The hands in the stance determines the weight distribution of the man. No stability, no strength. No strength, no power, no control. Big Dog, check your hands in your stance. Just in case you didn't know, there's power in your hands. Prep your hands to be powerful by checking your hands in your stance. Wherever your hands are on the land will determine how your hands will land. Woo. Big Dog, I'm excited. I'm ready to go to work myself. When you know what you're doing at the line of scrimmage, can't nobody stop you. I'm telling you that right now. I mean, that's what this all about, right? Big Dog Trench Talk, BigDogFootball.com is all about being unstoppable at the line of scrimmage. It's all about being the best you can be. That's all you can be, is the best you can be. And I'm telling you, we're going to help you do that here at BigDogFootball.com. I appreciate you spending time with Big Dog. You could have been anywhere else, but I appreciate you spending some time with me, sitting here talking trenches. There is an order, Big Dog. And when you keep order, you get operation.
Let's work. Work.
Make sure you visit BigDogFootball.com. Everything we talked about today, there are visual aids to show exactly what we were referring to. The hands, the hand positioning in the stance, the hand placement. It's all there when we break down the stance at BigDogFootball.com. That's BigDawg football.com. Hey, tell them Big Dog sent you. All right, Big Dog, you already know what time it is. We've been talking a lot about it. Now it's time to go do it. It's time to strap them cleats up, put them hands in the dirt, and it's time to go to work. Let's go.
Work. Let's work. Work.